Okay, experiment number 3 is entitled Types of Chemical Reactions. This is similar to our activities sa midterms na entitled din na Types of Chemical Reactions. However, the difference is since this one is supposedly an experiment, we have experimental procedures here in this worksheet. So you may have to do, you will be asked to do a schematic diagram for you to be familiar with the different procedure that we do in the laboratory, exhibiting the different types of chemical reactions. So do not forget our chemical reactions, how the types. We have the synthesis or the combination, wherein one substance combine with another substance to form most likely a compound. And then when you say number 2, we have decomposition reaction. Okay. Decomposition reaction wherein you will have a compound and it will decompose to its component na substances. So it can be an element or a compound. And then thirdly, we have the single replacement reaction. Please go back to the activity series of metal for you to determine whether the reaction is possible or not. Therefore, you really have to check that the replacement na element will be more reactive than the original element in the compound. And then we have the double displacement reaction also. I believe you can still remember these things since fresh pa sa atin ito, especially sa exam. Double displacement exchange partners tayo. But do not forget that opposite attracts when it comes to chemistry. Dapat positively charged will combine to the negatively charged. And lastly, we have the combustion reaction, which is a type of redox reaction wherein we have carbon-containing substance to serve as fuel for the flame. And we also have oxygen. So kailangan may oxygen na source. Mag-react silang dalawa to form carbon dioxide and water aside from the flame. So ito yung procedures natin, class. Supposedly, no, gagawin natin ito sa laboratory, but unfortunately, we are not yet allowed to go back to school. However, i-familiarize na lang natin kung ano yung mga different types of experiments that we can do so that we can observe these types of chemical reaction. So the first one here is the single replacement reaction. And what are we going to use here? We have here a zinc metal. We have a piece of zinc metal. And then to be reacted with copper 2 sulfate solution. So after nila mag-react, actually it is just done using a well plate, or kung wala tayong well plate, it can be done in a test tube. The well plate looks like this. It's a porcelain one. It can be a porcelain one. Meron siyang maraming butas na maliliit. And this is where you place drops only of our solution. And this is where we will have the reaction between zinc metal and the copper 2 sulfate. So supposedly, if we are going to do this experiment, we will observe what will happen when these two substances are mixed together. So that's the first one. That is for the single replacement reaction. And then for the combination reaction, we have two experiments here. The first one is with the use of magnesium ribbon, and the magnesium ribbon will be subjected into the Bunsen burner with a non-luminous or a blue flame. So yun lang, susunugin si magnesium. That's a pure magnesium metal. We call it magnesium ribbon. Susunugin siya. Therefore, pag may combustion, most likely the other reactant there is the oxygen. And then after burning, we just have to record what we have observed during the reaction. That's the first combination reaction. The other one, single replacement pala itong sa A, no? Ang B, combination. And then we have the second experiment for the combination or synthesis reaction. Now, what about this? It's through the use of calcium oxide. The same thing, we can use a plate well, or if we don't have a plate well, we can actually do this using a test tube. And then after that, we will be filling the test tube with distilled water. So ayun lang, calcium oxide and water. And then we will have to record what we have observed. And then actually, if gagawin talaga natin siya sa laboratory, we will be using a litmus paper to check the pH if the resulting solution will be acidic or basic. So yan yung next na supposedly gagawin natin. So that is for the combination reaction. And then we have sa letter C, decomposition reaction na naman ito. Sa decomposition reaction, the reactant here, the first reactant, actually the only reactant that we have here is the copper 2 sulfate pentahydrate to be placed in a dry test tube. And then after that, we will be subjecting the dry test tube sa flame of the Bunsen burner. So we will be observing what will happen to the copper 2 sulfate pentahydrate if we hit it with a Bunsen burner. After recording the observation, the next thing that you are going to do here is to add water. So after mo siyang i-heat, mag-a-add ka ng water doon kay copper 2 sulfate pentahydrate, and you will have to observe also what will happen to the particles after adding the water. So that's decomposition reaction. And then letter D, we have the double replacement or double displacement reactions. So what do we have here? Place a few drops of potassium iodide solution in a clean well. So that's a plate well pa rin. And then, few drops naman of lead nitrate. So ang ipaghahalo natin here are potassium iodide solution and the lead 2 nitrate. And then, dalawang experiment actually ito sa double replacement or double displacement. We will have to repeat the steps, but instead, we will be using silver nitrate solution and sodium chloride solution. So yan yung dalawang ginagawa for double replacement. However, under sa double displacement pa rin, we have the precipitation reaction. So this is specific for double displacement reactions that will result in the formation of precipitate sa products. So sa number 1, our reactant here is lead nitrate. Lalagay natin sa test tube and we will add aluminum nitrate into a second one. Second test tube. So dalawang test tube ito, class. Dalawang test tube. The first one will have the lead nitrate. And then the second test tube will have the aluminum nitrate. And then afterwards, both of these test tubes will be added with the potassium iodide. So silang dalawa ha, lagyan ng Ki. Dalawa sila. And then we will have to observe what will happen to the solution and record. Supposedly, yun yung gagawin natin. Pero dito, mag-identify na lang muna tayo ng sets of reactants for the following procedure. So that's precipitation reaction. Supposedly, we will expect the formation of precipitate from the reactions. And then letter B, this is still under the precipitation reaction and thus under pa rin siya sa double displacement. We have here 2 ml of copper 2 sulfate in a test tube and dalawa pa ring test tube dito. The first one will have the copper sulfate and then the other one will have the aluminum nitrate. And then anong gagawin? We will have to add sodium phosphate to both of the solutions. So instead of having the potassium iodide for the letter A na procedure, this time we will be using the sodium phosphate. So both of the test tubes will be added with sodium phosphate. And then in here, we will be also expecting the formation of the precipitate. Kasi precipitation reaction ito. And then, under ito pa rin sa double displacement, the gas-forming reactions, or to be specific, this is actually neutralization reaction. Remember, the neutralization reaction will give you salt and acid, but there are acid and base reactions that will give us gas. So in this case, we have sodium bicarbonate solution, and it will be reacted with the hydrochloric acid. So that's a base. Sodium bicarb is a basic substance, while syempre hydrochloric acid is an acid. So yun yung gagawin natin supposedly for the gas-forming reaction. We will really see here formation of gas or formation of bubbles. And lastly, for letter E, we have here the combustion reaction using a candle to be placed at the center and to be covered with a watch glass. Actually, tatakpan siya with a beaker, yung lighted candle natin. That is for the combustion reaction. And then for the second one, you have there a copper carbonate, not a solution but a powder. And then i-heat natin siya in a test tube with a hot flame. And we will also be observing what will happen to the chemical substance after heating. Yun yung dalawang procedures that we can do para ma-observe natin ang combustion reaction. But since we cannot do this in the laboratory, then this will be now your activity. So this is experiment number 2. Title again, types of chemical reactions. And the first thing that you are going to do is to do a schematic diagram of all the procedures that is supposedly done, that are supposedly to be done inside the laboratory. And then the second part is you have to fill in this table. What are you going to do with this table? From the procedure class, example, procedure A. Kung balikan natin si procedure A, na yung procedure A natin, procedure A natin is single replacement reaction. So isusulat mo siya here under sa A, sa table. And then you have to identify the reactants. Ano ba yung mga reactants na nakasulat doon sa procedure na yon? And then after that, you have to identify also the product or the products kung marami sila. So ganito na lang yung pagkasulat, nilagay nyo lang sa gitna yung arrow para maging isang reaction na siya. And do not forget to balance the reaction or the equation if necessary. Okay? Reactants coming from the procedure, and itong mga products, you are the one who will be going to predict the products for the reaction. And you also have to identify the types of reaction for each experimental procedure. So pasunod ito, A, B, C, D, and then we have the precipitation reaction, the gas forming reaction, and then letter E is the combustion reaction. If we have like 2 procedures, for example, for letter B, you have 2 procedures here, I will expect that you will also have 2 chemical equations to be written here sa B. Okay, sa experiment B. And then after filling in the table, you have to research for the answers of the following questions. So we have 3 questions here. You need to research for this, and then you will have to provide your conclusion. I would like to see in your conclusion the significant learnings you get while you're doing the experiment. So again, the deadline for this will be next week, Thursday, and this is to be reported by Group 5 on Friday. Now, Group 5, if you are able to look for YouTube videos of the procedures, then you may present that also sa Friday during the reporting. But Group 5, may I give a heads up first. Sa Friday, we will only have 1:30 to 3 p.m. na class kasi meron tayong activity on Friday. So limit your presentation Group 5 next week Friday na kasya lang siya from 1:30 to 3 p.m. Okay? Actually, wala kayong activity. Ang mga teachers ang merong activity on Friday. So the class will be suspended by 3 p.m. onwards. Merong research